Okay, so I want us to look at a ratios question now, okay, and the main reason I think this is a really important one is that it comes up on roughly about half your papers in the Leaving Cert. I was checking over there quickly now, I could be wrong, but I looked over there on the past papers there, it's come up 11 times out of 21 years, okay, so again, more often than not, you're going to see this question, okay, so also it didn't come up 2018 or 2019, so it's just one that I'd be ruthless with, I'd make sure I knew really, really well for this year. So if you see it here, first thing to look out for, 20 mark question, you've got 8 minutes to do it. Okay, so the time management there is very important, but that's fine. So 20 marks, 8 minutes. So what they've done here is they've given us this information for Flame Limited. Okay, so they've told us their authorised share capital 900,000, issued shares 450, long-term loans 200, and the retained earnings is 150,000. First part of the question is the definition for the debt equity ratio. Now, when that came up in 2014, most students got the marks of the calculations, but this is where their grade got held down. Okay, so you need to make sure you know the definition on this. So I was marking this even in here, blue, the key parts of the definition. What we see here at the debt equity ratio, it shows us an analysis of the capital structure of the business, okay? So it indicates what proportion of the capital is made up of long-term loans and what proportion of the capital is made up of reserves and issued share capital. But that's what I'd be making sure to spot. So really what they mean with this definition is, if we take a look at this company here, Flame Limited, it shows us where their money has come from in terms of how they've grown their business. So they have issued share capital. Now what you want to look out for here is, the question's called the debt equity ratio. So what we're looking out for here is debt, that's borrowed money, and equity is the money that the owners have invested into the business. So we need to look down at these and say, right, which ones here fall under debt and which ones fall under equity. Okay, authorized share capital is neither. That's the first thing you want to spot, okay? That just tells us how many shares they're allowed to issue, okay? So they're allowed to sell up to 900,000 euro worth of shares, but look out for that, okay? So if the student doesn't notice that well, they might think they have to throw that in as part of your calculations. This never comes up as part of your calculation. Next thing then is issued share capital. That's the amount of shares they've issued. Now when you sell shares to somebody, they buy into your business, then they become an owner in the business. So remember what I said earlier, debt is borrowed money, equity is the money that the owners invest into this business. So if somebody's invested money into this business, then they've become an owner. So what we see with issued share capital is that falls under equity. Okay, so that's the first thing. Long-term loans, that's money you've borrowed from the bank, so it's someone else's money, must be paid back. That's debt. And then we've got retained earnings. This profit the company made that they reinvested back into the business, and that falls in as equity. Okay, so that's your first little thing you spot at the start. You go down through them. You've got issued share capital, long-term loans, retained earnings. Next part then is the calculations. Next part I have to do here is calculate this and show my workings, which is worth 10 marks. So the first thing I'd always do is I put down the formula. So the formula here is going to be debt over equity. And now I must spot what they are. Okay, so my debt here in this case is going to be my long-term loans. And my equity is going to be my issued shares and my retained earnings. Okay, so the next stage there, but just looking over from there, that's the breakdown of the debt that I have is long-term loans, and the equity is going to be my issued shares and my retained earnings. So I'm going to add that up there. If I do the maths on it, I've got my long-term loans, which is going to be 200,000, and then I've got my issued shares, which is 450,000, and my retained earnings, which is 150,000. Now again, once I add these up, I've got 200,000 over 600,000, and the answer I'm going to get here is 0.33. So one other little thing to look out for, right, is that like once you've done this, be careful about how they can tweak this questions, because even if you're able to do the maths there, that's half the battle with the calculations. The other thing to look out for is they can change the terms a lot. So like you might see in your Leaving Cert, they might call retained earnings, they might call it reserves. Okay, and it means the same thing. And then also you might see issued share capital. They might call issued share capital, they could call it equity shares or ordinary shares, and that also means the same thing. So that's the main, if you're in that in the exam, sometimes students might get thrown off, they might do reserves, they don't know where it falls down. Just remember, reserves, retained earnings is the same thing, and issued shares, equity shares or ordinary shares are also the same thing. But then the last thing to stress is that what you do ignore in the calculations if it says authorised share. If you see authorised share, just draw a line through it. You don't include it in the calculations. It just tells us how many shares the business is allowed to issue. Okay, but it never takes part in the calculations. Okay, so the next part of this question here is they want you to discuss the importance of debt equity ratio when deciding on new source of finance. So really what they want you to be able to do is to be able to look at this business here and say, like, right, we know that their debt equity ratio is 0.33 to 1. What does that mean if they want to come across a new source of finance? So the first thing you always want to spot, right, is when it's 0.33 to 1. And I'll write up the debt equity ratio here. Just it's 0.33 to 1. That tells me that they are lowly geared. And that's a key point, right? So you want to make sure you spot that. Now, what's it actually mean when it's lowly geared? All it means here is that their debt is less than their equity. So if we look at their debt, it's 0.33 to 1. That's their debt, 0.33, and their equity is 0.1. So they're lowly geared. So whenever you've got debt less than your equity, the business is lowly geared. Now, in terms of seeking finance, that's good news for this business because it means that if they want to borrow more money, they can. As in, they've got very few existing loans out. That their loans meant to borrow, see there, it's only 200,000 compared to your equity, which is 600,000. Borrowing is an option for them. If they're very, very highly geared and they had a huge amount of debt and they were their debt equity ratio was a lot bigger, their debt was a lot bigger than their equity, then you'd say that you wouldn't recommend them borrowing more because they'd have already high interest to pay. But seeing as they've got a low amount of loans and they're lowly geared, borrowing is an option. So that's the first point to look out for. So I'll write it up here on the board now. Next part of this question here is that they want you to discuss the importance of the debt equity ratio when deciding a new source of finance or flame limited. So what they want you to be able to do is to advise flame limited on what should they do. Should they, if they want to take out new finance, should they go with debt or should they go with equity? Now flame limited are in a very, very good position because what we see here is that they're lowly geared. Whenever you see that a business is lowly geared, it's when their debt is less than their equity. First thing they could do is they can decide to sell additional loans. They can decide to take out new loans as they do not have much existing loans. So the big thing there, you can say it doesn't have too many existing loans as they are lowly geared. Okay, so make sure whatever way you're building that in, all it does, it tells us they're lowly geared. The second option that they have as well is going to be that they can sell more shares. And that what we're doing there as well, if you look back, do you remember on that question, you saw their authorised share capital is 900,000. That's basically the amount of shares they're allowed to sell. We see that they've already issued 450,000, so they've a remaining 450,000 euro worth of shares that they can issue. And see that there? That's where we got that 450,000. Okay, so Flame Limited can raise further capital by selling shares up to a limit of 450,000. And you have to show the examiner where you got that. So imagine here if their issued shares was 600,000. You'd knock it off their authorised shares, which is 900, and you'd have a remaining of 300,000 to put in. But that's just the idea, so make sure you can always spot that. You get the authorised, take away the issued shares, and that tells you the remaining amount of shares they can sell. But yeah, so they're the two key points to make sure you use. But no matter what, always explain that, lowly geared. If it's less than 1, you say they're lowly geared, and more than 1, you say they're highly geared. That's an example of how to tackle that question on the debt equity ratio. So quick thing just to look over there when you're going down really hard, they break down the marks as well. You get, when they ask you to calculate the debt equity ratio for 10 marks, you got 2 marks for the formula, you got 6 marks for putting in the right figures, and then you got 2 marks for the correct answer at the end. And the same thing then when they said discuss the importance of the debt equity ratio, they gave you 6 marks for that, and there's 3 marks for each point you made. So that's really just an example of how to go over a question on the debt equity ratio. But the key thing is, once you feel like you've got your head around that and you understand the calculations part, it's not enough to just leave it at that. You have to go over the questions. And there's good questions from 2017, 2016 on the debt equity ratio. 2014 we did that one there. 2012, 2010, 2009. If you just keep chipping away at these past questions, I feel it's going to be very worthwhile for your Leaving Cert this year. But again, the key thing, get practicing on them and work off the marking schemes, and it's a great feeling when that comes up in your Leaving Cert and if you know that question inside out. So you'll find it's under your ratios chapter in Unit 4. It's one of the 6 ratios, 6 calculations you need to have right. Okay, thanks a lot.